will reconvene part 1 of the Planning Committee and carry on with the Kitchener Growth Management Strategy 2022 Annual Monitoring Report. We already received the staff presentation. Thank you. There were a few that had keyed in for questions. If you can key back in. No? Do you want like a very quick summary or any specifics? You remember? Okay, all right. Councillor Ioannidis?
I think it was regarding, I guess, our growth expectation. From what we had projected the last few years, we undervalued our growth, basically, is what I'm trying to confirm it.
Through the chair, our official plan forecast, thank you. Our official plan forecast that's currently in effect, so from the old official plan, if we were to straight line sort of that 2014 to 2031 number, we're still under that expectation, but the rate of growth has increased in recent years.
Okay, so we're under, basically. Okay, so that's contrary to what we've been hearing around this horseshoe for some time.
Yeah, just most recently, I think we started edging closer to the what the recommended growth target is by the region, 60%, but we haven't met it yet. So, anyone else? Questions?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not seeing any queuing in. Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, it went right in. Is that
did it? Okay, it should be fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
So, to staff, please.
Yeah, so I had a couple questions on page, figure number 2. When it says received, draft, approved, and registered, what does registered mean?
Go ahead.
Through the chair, so a plan is registered or condominium is registered when all the conditions of approval have been satisfied. So, for example, you can't sell a lot in a plan of subdivision until it's registered. So all the conditions have been cleared, etc.
Okay, so when we talk about our density ratios, let's say a development, I'm thinking of the UGC area, right? Because that's where my ward lands. Sites like Station Park, the Schneider site, 30 Francis, are these counted as part of the density ratios of 218 residents and jobs at this point, or are they not yet?
So the way that we calculate the urban growth center densities is a hybrid of some regional data and city data, but typically when the permit is pulled for that building, it's included as a unit. So anything that had its permit pulled is counted in the figure there for UGC, even if it hasn't been occupied yet.
So presumably all of the ones I just rhymed off would be. Well, I don't think the Schneider site is even in the UGC, but the ones I just mentioned would all be included?
Correct.
But the one, the proposals that we had, the 44-story buildings on Queen Street and Charles, that general area, there were 2 of them. Would they be included in those numbers?
So I'm not totally up on the status of those, but I don't believe a building permit has been applied for yet, so no, they wouldn't be applied. The other thing to note here is the dates of the report, so they're operative June to June, so anything that happened between June and today doesn't make it in this report either.
Okay, so you don't know how much current numbers would vary from what we have here?
Through the chair, no, not easily.
Okay, so, I mean, you're saying that we're not reaching our density targets if we think between here and 2031? I mean, in fact, the way I read this, we're way along, like we're doing really well.
Sorry, I misunderstood Councillor Ioannidis' question. I thought his question was about population and how our population is growing as compared to our forecast. Our overall population growth is slightly less than we forecasted through the last official plan. But the intensification rate, so the amount of development that's happening within the built-up area, is higher than our official plan and regional target. And it's approaching the adopted but not yet enforced target for us in the ROP of 60.
Right. So I was just trying to do some math, and I'm not a mathematician, but I was looking at, so we have 100, and again, I'm talking about the UGC. We have 107 hectares of land, and if right now we're at 218 residents and jobs per hectare, that means we have approximately just over 24,000 persons and hectares, or persons and jobs in the UGC right now. Is that right? And then if we multiply the 107 hectares by the 225 target number that we have, that means we would need, let's say, 23,500 jobs and persons per hectare. So we're only have a deficit of 749 jobs and residents in the UGC. Like, I'm looking at the whole UGC, not per hectare. I'm trying to multiply it out into the whole area of 107 hectares and the density ratios that we set for ourselves. So does that make sense, the way I'm trying to calculate this out?
Through the chair, I didn't follow along with your math exactly, but conceptually, that sounds right.
Okay.
So it's important to know two things. One, that yes, we are very close to achieving the minimum density target that was set out in the official plan, the current official plan of 225. But that is a minimum, and it's not the only thing we're looking to achieve when we're planning for downtown. So complete communities, vibrancy, transit supportive, affordability objectives, et cetera. But yes, conceptually, your math sort of makes sense. It is appropriate to multiply the areas by the densities like that.
Right.
Mr. May, do you want to add something further? Oh, no, sorry.
Through the chair. So those are minimums. I think that's a very important criteria to establish. That is the base level. So if we do better than that, it's actually a net benefit for our community because we have more people, patrons at shops and things like that. But there's other factors as well, like major transit station areas, and so there's a radius around those, so we have to achieve 160 people and jobs per hectare. And then from time to time, the province updates our targets, and so, as the province continues to grow, they'll look for different municipalities and urban growth centers to accommodate more growth as well. So right now, that's the certain minimum that we're trying to target, but that'll likely increase over time as well.
Right, no, and I get that, but, let's work with what we have to do, right? So in fact, isn't it the province that only requires that we have 220 or something like that? Not even 220, 210 or something per persons and jobs per hectare? And then a Kitchener official plan raises that to 225. So, I think we're in really good shape. I'm quite pleased with this report. Thank you. I had another question. Oh, do you want me to go out?
No, go ahead if you have another question.
I had a question about the estimated total supply on that page, 6.3 of the report. What do we mean by mature state? Like, is this a professional designation or what does it mean?
Through the chair, so that language is not precise or technical. I think the intent there is to say that as more and more dwelling units and non-residential spaces are developed, eventually we'll expect to see changes in where the development occurs as more and more development happens. So the more intensification that happens in the city, different opportunities arise in the greenfield, et cetera. It's not a very precise sentence.
Okay, thank you. My last question has to do with the planning principles, and I don't see any mention here of parkland or affordability or sustainability. This is under item number 8, I guess, a place to grow implementation, and if you follow down to planning principles. Is there a reason why, maybe it's just the type of study that's being done here that we've received, but it just seems that those should be part of those planning principles.
So the question is, does that need to be included in a report such as this? Not to say it's not important, but is there relevance to speaking of the growth targets when it also should be outlining the necessary infrastructure accordance to that growth?
Yeah, through the chair, certainly sustainability, parks, et cetera, are important planning principles that we should be planning for. This list is not meant to be an exhaustive one, and it doesn't really affect the nuts and bolts of the report. It's attempting to provide some context, so I take your point that it could be a more fulsome list.
Something to consider for future reports. Thank you.
You're good? Okay. I'm sorry about that. Mr. Mays never looked so good, so apologies. I didn't even realize until I looked up. So thank you. I think through the questions, we understand that we have been meeting our targets, or perhaps in consideration exceeding, but then again, these are older targets. With the new proposed target of 60%, we're not necessarily there yet. That being aside, through Bill 23, I think all the calculations probably need to be redone again with the anticipated 30,000 units that would be needed to be built in our community or city to meet the provincial targets. Can that be accommodated with the 60% target that we have so far? Do we have that assessment yet? How much higher would the targets need to be? And if that's not the case and we want to exceed that 60%, what more can we do or we would be required to do with our planning policies? And go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you'll recall, the Kitchener Growth Management Strategy is up for review and it's on our work plan this year. A lot of things and a lot of variables have changed, especially over the last couple of years. For example, work from home, hybrid work environment, compressed work weeks. The way that we used to count jobs to meet our minimum densities has changed. So it's something that we really need to evaluate how we're doing those calculations. And all that is to say that although we can achieve our minimum densities, that's not a measure of city life, that's not a measure of vibrancy, that's not a measure of reaching any of the strategic goals that's set forth by this council. So we have a minimum requirement that we measured persons and jobs that we have to report to the region and through to the province, but by no way is meeting minimum densities a measure of vibrancy. We know that adding people and adding jobs to our downtown creates a more livable city and we're trying to achieve our 15-minute city. So although we are on our way to achieving some of those, we know that we have to relook at how those numbers are calculated, because there has been a lot of changes, and that's part of our work plan this year.
And as part of the work plan, review of the UGC and defining the boundary of that, is that part of the work plan as well? And the timeline, when is that coming back?
So we're not looking at changing the parameters or the boundary of the UGC. That is set by the province. We will be implementing our land use designations and zoning bylaws and other amendments to planning frameworks to implement our major transit station areas. So all of the land use permissions within our central neighborhoods that have access to rapid transit. So that's something that we're bringing in as part of our work plan for 2023.
Okay, all right. I see no other questions. There's no direction being sought. Would a vote be required? I don't think so. All right, thank you very much to staff, and thank you for your patience. I know you had to wait most of the day to get to this item, so thank you for staying with us. Now we'll go on. Oh. Go ahead, Garrett.
Sorry, through the chair, there is a recommendation in the report to fulfill obligations for delegated approval authority with
Okay.
respect to the monitoring report.
Okay. And Mr. Reedman, did you want to bring that up as well? Oh, you guys keep on trying to trick me here. Okay. All right, that's not the case. Can I get a mover for that then? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Thank you. I'm looking online as well. Okay. In that case, let me see here. And there's, for our information, quarterly development application update as well. But that's for us, for our review only. So on to meeting part 2, which is as part of our public hearing matter under the Planning Act. So I'll just read this out. This is a formal public meeting to consider application under the Planning Act if a person or public body does not make oral or written submissions to the City of Kitchener before the proposed applications are considered. The person or public body may not be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal. And just for the delegations later this evening, just quickly read this out to you. I would like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate removal from the meeting, interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, turning your camera on at an inappropriate time, and hate speech or defamatory comments, or hurt this chair's fragile ego. The last one's a joke, so no, that's okay, you can hers. One last reminder for the delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is a council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community and members. So on to item 10.1, which is official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment for 1251 King Street East and 16 Sheldon Avenue South. And Mr. Dumart, I guess you're up again. You will be presenting first. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, members of the committee. Before you is a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment application for the subject properties located at 1251, 1253 King Street East and 16 Sheldon Avenue South, proposing a 27-story mixed-use development with 408 residential dwelling units and 484 square meters of commercial space. The proposed development includes the consolidation of two properties addressed as 1251 to 1253 King Street East and 16 Sheldon Avenue South, which is located at the intersection of King Street East and Sheldon Avenue and Charles Street East. The consolidated lands have frontage on 3 streets, being King Street, Sheldon, and Charles Street East. The subject lands are currently developed with a commercial plaza and surface parking lot. The surrounding neighborhood consists of a variety of uses, including high-rise, medium-rise, and low-rise multi-dwelling developments, as well as single and semi-detached dwellings, commercial and institutional buildings. The subject lands are located within 500 meters of the Borden Iron LRT station stop, which is located at the intersection of Charles Street East and Borden Avenue South. Existing bus routes operate along King Street, and the subject lands are in close proximity to the downtown cycling grid and trails. So the subject lands are located in the major transit station area in the urban structure of the City of Kitchener's official plan. And again, as noted in my previous slide, the station stop for the Borden LRT station is within 500 meters, which is a 6-minute walk from the subject lands to that station stop. The planned function of a major transit station area is to provide density and developments that will support transit and rapid transit with a mix of residential, office, institutional, and commercial developments. This proposed development represents intensification that will help the city achieve density targets in the MTSA. The proposed development will support higher density housing options that will make efficient use of existing infrastructure, parks, roads, trails, and transit. So the subject lands and all the adjacent lands along King Street East in this neighborhood are designated as mixed-use corridor in the King Street East neighborhood secondary plan. And mixed-use corridors, they provide residential redevelopment opportunities together with appropriate commercial and institutional uses. So the existing land use designation permits a maximum floor space ratio of 4, but it can be increased to a floor space ratio of 5 if the development includes a food store. In the mixed-use corridor land use designation, there is also no building height. The planned vision for the subject lands and the surrounding King Street East lands is for a mixed-use corridor with high-intensity mixed-use developments. To facilitate the proposed 27-story mixed-use development, the owner is proposing to change the official plan designation from mixed-use corridor with special policy area 1 to mixed-use corridor with special policy area 9 in the King Street East secondary plan. So special policy 9 will allow for a floor space ratio of 8.6. And to implement special policy 9, the applicant is proposing to change the zoning from high-intensity mixed-use corridor zone with special regulation 544R to high-intensity mixed-use zone, with special regulation provisions 544R, 783R, and 96H. So special regulation 544R exists, and it permits building setbacks of 1.5 meters to Charles Street East. Special regulation 783R will be new, and that will allow for an increased floor space ratio of 8.6. It will require a parking rate of 0.43 spaces per unit, 0.5 Class A bicycle parking spaces. It will require 20% of parking spaces to be EV ready. Furthermore, special regulation provision 783R will allow for dwelling units and commercial uses both to be located on the ground floor, while holding provision 97H will require remediation of site contamination and an updated noise study. So before you is the concept site plan for the proposed mixed-use development, which shows the 27-story building, which is Building A for you, and an 8-story residential building, which is Building B. And connecting the two is a 1,048 square meter, so that's 11,288 square feet, rooftop amenity space, which is located on the podium and the parking structure which connects the two buildings. And this mixed-use building proposes, again, a total of 408 residential units, approximately 484 square meters of commercial retail space. Of those 408 residential units, a mix of units are provided, including 21 bachelor units, 243 one-bedroom units, and 144 two-bedroom units. None of these units are proposed as affordable dwelling units, and rather what this development is proposing is 408 purpose-built rental units, which is a more affordable housing type than, say, purchasing a home. So this rendering here shows the building massing in the perspective would be along King Street East. The King Street frontage is activated by at-grade commercial units with, again, 484 square meters of commercial space along the King Street frontage, while the Charles Street frontage will be activated with 5 residential units in the form of townhouse-style units which will have direct connection to Charles Street East. Principal entrances and lobbies are located at grade with direct access to public sidewalks, and the proposed development again includes a 27-story with 8-story podiums. The bases are clearly defined and enhance the streetscape. Furthermore, building step-backs are proposed at the 25th and 26th story, and those are incorporated into the building design. So this development proposal, it represents an opportunity. It presents an opportunity to redevelop an underutilized parcel of land with a new compatible development that aligns with the city's official plans. We have an opportunity here to increase housing supply and add purpose-built housing in an MTSA. This development will contribute to meeting the city's intensification target for the Borden Station major transit station area of 160 people and jobs per hectare, which it currently does not meet that minimum target, as only 44 people and jobs per hectare are currently present in this MTSA. This development will diversify housing stock and provide additional housing choices in the community. And furthermore, it will provide for a new compatible built form and help contribute towards a complete community. In conclusion, staff are supportive of the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications. The proposed applications are consistent with policies of the provincial policy statement, conform to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the regional official plan, City Kitchener official plan, represent good planning, and are in the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dumar. So again, to the committee, we'll hold questions of staff till after all the delegations have presented. We'll move on to Mr. Chavon. You have 5 minutes. You'll be presenting from online. Pierre, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Singh, members of the committee. My name is Pierre Chauvet. I'm with MHBC Planning. I did have a presentation for you this evening, but in the interest of time, and I know you've already had a long evening, I'll forego this presentation because a lot of it was very well covered already by Craig. And I want to thank him for that presentation and the rest of your staff, because we will be working with them further on the site plan, and we look forward to working with them on that process. With me this evening as well is Mr. Stephen Litt with Vive Development Corporation. He's the Chief Development Officer with Vive, and as some of you may know, Vive is a very prominent local rental housing provider and developer in the KW area. So again, we're both here to lend our support to the staff report and recommendation, and we would ask that you direct any questions to either myself or Mr. Litt, who is present as well.
Okay, so he would not be presenting separately, right? This is a joint submission?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, excellent. I'll look to committee, see if anyone has questions. Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned in the, well, I guess it was a staff report, but I'll ask you the question about the EV-ready parking stalls. Are there going to be any EV stalls?
There will be, when we say EV ready, they'll certainly be wired and pre-wired. That is really the requirement, is to provide the installation of the wiring. I can't speak to the details of the construction of how many are going to be actually built, and maybe I'll defer that to Mr. Litt if he can answer that.
I could barely hear the response.
Can you just repeat the
Yeah.
last little bit, Mr. Chavon? Just a little bit louder to the mic,
Yeah,
please.
but they're
Sure,
not, they're
I'll
not
just
set
say
up.
that we are wiring the EV stations, but to the actual number that will actually be constructed, I'll defer that to Mr. Litt.
Mr. Litt's going to explain further as to what's going to be EV ready or not. Mr. Litt, go ahead.
Oliver,
Sorry, say again?
all of our current projects, we're installing roughly 5%, not EV ready, but actually EV charging stations. NRCan has a subsidy program to help us pay for those spots to electrify transportation network. So at least 5%, I suspect probably more like 10 on this project, given its urban nature.
So 5% of the 82 will be actual EV chargers, and the other, oh,
Yes.
Yes.
No, all of the EV ready spots will be electrified.
but will the chargers actually be there? Because I understand EV ready is, or net zero ready, it doesn't mean that it's actually connected. It's, the wiring might be there, but the chargers themselves are not there.
Yeah, if you go, we will install all of the chargers at occupancy in this project for sure. Yeah.
Okay, of all 82? I guess yes. Okay.
He
thank
said
you.
5%, whichever the number
5%.
is, and it would be electrified, which was his answer, which I think he clarified that they would be charge ready.
Okay. My other question has to do with the, I think sorry.
Mr. Litt, if you want to repeat the last bit that you just said.
I think my connection's terrible, sorry about that. Yeah, I can confirm that all of them will have chargers installed.
You just affirmed what I clarified.
All 82? Or the 5%? Sorry.
Yeah, all of them, all 82.
Okay, great, thank you. Also, I think in the report it referred to attainable rents. Could you give us more information on that, please?
Yeah, so our business model, without getting into the full presentation that many staff, councillors have seen before, and I look forward to meeting some new councillors next year. So our model is mid-market rental. So I know earlier today you approved a vacant land condo for our King Cameo project. So I can more accurately speak to applications that we're about ready to build, and that is one of them. So that project has the entire complex is rents at 90% of market rent, and then 72 of the suites are at 70% of 30% of average household income in Kitchener. That building is also, this is Tower A, 304 suites. I know I'm speaking about another application, but we sort of exist in a framework where government programs to help us build these projects, RCFI, MLI Select, are very dynamic depending upon where we are, the booking season. So that project as well, it exceeds national building code by 40% from an energy perspective. So it's I know your question was about attainable housing, but that is that project, and I would anticipate that this project would be likely very similar to that. We would hope to build this starting about 1 year from now. So.
Okay. The other question I had is regarding in the zone change comments form, it states the importance that the project reinforce the character of King Street, and it lists a number of options. So it talks about public art, a living wall, community-oriented space, etc. So I was just wondering if you had put any thought into how you're going to reinforce the character of King Street with your proposal.
Well, I think part of that, if I may just speak to that in part, maybe Stephen can jump in, hopefully his connection is okay. But some of that will be addressed, I would say the majority of that will be addressed through site plan. We are, as you know, proposing a mixed-use development with ground-oriented commercial space along King to help animate that frontage and create more of a animated public realm. And there will be a landscape plan required as part of our development, and whatever we can do within the right-of-way, we will certainly endeavor to look at improving the landscape elements along that street frontage. In addition to that, there's also the second, I'll call it the second frontage, Charles Street, which we are also animating by creating street townhouses along the frontage. So again, it's not a blank wall. Your people who are walking along the sidewalk will, at least feel a little safer with eyes on the street, and that in itself will help create that sort of vibrancy along both those frontages.
Okay, I see Councillor Johnson has her hand up, so.
Yes, no, I let you
Thank
ask your last question. I see that. So if you have more questions, you can ring back in afterwards. Councillor Johnson, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Singh. Thank you very much for the presentation, Mr. Chauvin. I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on the outdoor amenities piece. That's kind of between the two buildings there. It's hard to get a sense of how big that is. And I'm wondering I know that you haven't done your site plan yet, but I'm wondering if there will be things for kids there, or what are you looking to do with that space?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the question, it is
Pierre, if you can try to speak it just a little bit closer to your mic, a little bit louder, it'll help us to clearly hear you.
The amenity space, rooftop amenity space, is about the size of the Tower A, or the closest tower to King Street, so it has a very large footprint. We haven't, again, like you mentioned, we're still early stages. We haven't programmed the space yet, but certainly looking at providing as much amenity space for all tenants within this building. There will also be indoor amenity space, so it's not just outdoor amenity space, but there will be indoor amenity space for the tenants to enjoy and do activities indoors as well.
Okay, thank you, and I'll just make a brief comment, if that's okay with Councillor Singh, or Chair Singh, excuse me, that it would be great, if we need to use that space as well as possible, right, as you know. So I'm looking forward to seeing some creative ideas and maybe working with our parks people and see about some neat things to put in there. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clancy. Go ahead.
So yeah, I think this is in many ways a good project, having more attainable rental stock in the area. I know that the seniors who live across the street were hoping for groceries. I know that there's a lot of people who struggle to make it to our local grocery stores, so that's appealing. And staff shared some of the considerations made to make the project very environmentally, a good environmental build, so that was good to hear. I guess some concern, just a lot of residents complain about high rises nearby. There's a lot of big projects in that area, and so that's just something I wanted to share, that some local residents are concerned about the height. But I guess that's more of a comment. I don't know if there's really a question there, but thank you.
All right, I don't see anyone else in queue. And there are no delegations that are registered, so thank you, Mr. Chauvin. Thank you, Mr. Litt.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll open up the floor for questions of staff. All right, I'm not seeing anyone. I'm trying to see online. No one online either. Oh, Councillor Clancy, go ahead.
Just, I know that in the past, Vive has been generous, and just wondering if there'll be future contributions to affordable housing projects to help our city reach our goals.
That would have been a good question too for, I think, Mr. Chamon and Mr. Litt, I think you're still there, are you not? As soon as they heard affordable housing, no, sorry, poor connection. Perhaps staff can comment, go ahead.
Back, I can answer.
Oh, okay, great.
Sorry about that, I'm back. It's a great question, absolutely. So most recently on the 1668, better known as the Schwaben Club project, there was a donation. I think what needs to be considered is sort of the totality of the number of projects, sort of as a portfolio of what we're providing. This project is a significant brownfield, so there's a significant cleanup as part of this one. This one's probably going to be more of a mid-market rental project. I can speak about some of the other projects we've done, but this one's more about supply of sort of that mid-market housing to help slow down some of the crazy inflation that we've had in rental as of late. So just to compare and contrast, since Schwaben Club to the Sheldon project, interest rates have gone up considerably, as we all know. Construction costs have still increased. If we look at this project and built it out today, it would be pretty much a break-even project from an economic perspective. So where and whenever possible, we like to layer in that affordable housing. It's just very difficult for us to commit to that at this point in the project. So.
Thank you, Mr. Litt, for coming back and clarifying a little bit. And Councillor Chapman, I think you were trying to...
Yeah, this is actually for staff. I noticed that in this particular case, we're allowing dwelling units to be located on the ground floor. I thought that was kind of a no-no. So what's different about this development that we're permitting it?
Through the chair, there's an existing provision in zoning bylaw 85-1 for our mixed-use zonings, which allow for one or the other. It's either dwelling units or commercial uses. In this case, they're proposing both. So they're activating Charles Street with dwelling units and activating King Street with commercial uses.
Okay.
Just for clarification, is that convertible space though? Is that still going to be built in a way that's convertible, that the ceiling heights or built form is in a way that it could be reverted back to commercial if the market is there?
Through the chair, the Charles Street units are proposed for at-grade townhouse-style units.
Okay.
So they will allow for commercial uses should those tenants choose to have commercial uses in their home businesses, but the intent is that they're purpose-built units in the form of townhouse styles.
Okay. Sorry, just for your clarification, that's all. Go ahead.
The other question I had was regarding this 544R, which allows for an increased FSR if there is a food store. So is there actually, you can't commit to that, right? You can suggest that we'd really like a food store, but there's nothing that holds the developer to that. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair. So 544R is an existing site-specific or special regulated provision, and that helps implement the existing land use policies. And essentially what that says is you can do an FSR 4, or you can go to 5 if you have a food store. So our existing planning framework essentially envisioned that this is where there could be a food store and it built into the zoning, that zoning specific to implement our official plan. So in this case here, no, they're not proposing a food store. Rather, they've gone the OPA-ZBA route to increase the density. And 544R has been amended to continue to allow the setback along Charles Street, because it allows more than just a food store. It also regulates building setbacks in orientants where developments can be built. So 544R will continue to apply, and then the actual special regulations for the FSR, parking, and permissions for dwelling units to be on the ground floor along commercial uses is then regulated through 783R.
So there's no serious talk about a food store, a grocery store?
That is correct, not through this development.
Right, okay. I had a question about the proximity to the cycling grid. Like, it's about 1.5 kilometers. Is that considered close to, next to?
Through the chair, yes, it would be in close proximity to the cycling grid, as you mentioned, within 1 kilometer, which would be about a 1-minute bike ride.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I don't see anyone else that's queued in. I'll take a mover. Councillor Clancy. Any comments? I see none. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. So there was a delayed hand going up. Was there anyone opposed that's online? Councillor Orduni? That was in support, right? Okay. Good. So that was supported unanimously. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you to staff. And on to item 10.2, which is the official plan amendment for 4220 King Street East and 25 Sportsfield Crossing. And it's Mr. Dumar. You're up again. You're working overtime today. Wow. Yeah. So you can present. Yeah, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Before you is a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment application for the subject properties located at 4220 King Street East and 25 Sportsfield Crossing Road, proposing a mixed-use development with 3 towers, 14, 15, and 18 stories in height, with a total of 520 residential units and a combined commercial area of 3,651 square meters. So the proposed development includes 2 separate properties, that being 4220 King Street East and 25 Sportsfield Crossing, that will be developed separately in 2 phases. 25 Sportsfield Crossing will be the first phase, which is an irregular shaped parcel of land, which is currently vacant and has frontage on both King Street East and 25 Sportsfield Crossing. Phase 2 will be developed as 4220 King Street East, which is a rectangular shaped parcel of land with frontage along King Street East and access off a privately owned road. 4220 King Street East is currently developed with a 1-story commercial building occupied by a restaurant, the Mandarin, and a furniture store, home-style furniture. The subject lands are completely surrounded by commercial developed lands to the south, to the north, to the east, the west, and they're situated in close proximity to Highway 8 and Highway 401. Furthermore, the planned Sportswear LRT station stop is located directly in front of the subject lands at 25 Sportsfield Crossing Road, and existing bus routes operate along King Street East. So the subject lands are located in the major transit station area of the urban structure of the City of Kitchener's official plan. The station area for the planned Sportswear LRT station is again located directly, just like in front of the subject lands. The planned function of major transit station areas is to provide density and developments that will support transit, rapid transit, and with a mix of residential, office, institutional, and commercial developments. To facilitate the proposed mixed-use development, the owner is proposing to change the official plan designation from commercial and commercial campus to mixed use in the City of Kitchener's official plan, and change the zoning from arterial commercial and commercial campus with site-specific provision 37 and zoning bylaw 2019-051 to mixed-use 3 zone with site-specific provision 353 and zoning bylaw 2019-051. So site-specific regulation 353 will regulate the minimum commercial area, increase the floor space ratio, allow for a building height of up to 18 stories or 70 meters, regulate the maximum parking, reduce the ground floor facade height and podium height, which is a requirement and necessary due to the significant grade change of the site. Holding provision 37H is no longer required, and what 37H was requesting was an updated noise study. At the time of the staff report, the Region of Waterloo had requested a holding provision be included as part of the bylaw. On December 6, the Region of Waterloo informed staff that a holding provision for a noise study would not be required, as an updated noise study had been approved by the region. As such, staff have updated the bylaw to no longer require holding provision 37H to be part of that bylaw. Additionally, staff received correspondence late this morning from the applicant informing staff that the floor space ratio calculation for the proposed official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment was incorrect. The applicant was in the process of finalizing site plan drawings for the site, and they identified the calculation error that the parking structure, which is above King Street East, was not included in that floor space calculation. As such, the floor space ratio for the proposed development is being requested 5.2 rather than 4.0, and the applicant will be speaking further to this in their presentation tonight. So before you is the concept site plan for the proposed mixed-use development, showing the proposed mixed-use buildings with the three-story towers, 14, 15, and 18 stories in height. The proposed development will include 520 dwelling units with a combined 3,651 square meters of commercial space, 922 parking spaces located both underground, internal to the building, and on the surface. Vehicle access will be from the existing laneway off of 4278 King Street East, and there'll be access off of Sports World Crossing and the private road, which is right across from Dairy Drive. This rendering here shows the building massing along King Street East. All three of the towers have been oriented towards a street with frontages with 2 to 3 story podiums and building stepbacks. All three of the towers' massing is broken up vertically by a variation and articulation of building materials. Furthermore, balconies for the residential units are included and are street fronting. All the street frontages are activated by at-grade commercial units, again with a combined 3,651 square meters of commercial space along King Street East, Sports World Crossing, and the private road. And furthermore, both buildings' principal entrances and lobbies are located at grade with direct access to public sidewalks. The three towers include podiums that have defined bases, and they further increase the streetscape. So this development here, it represents an opportunity. We have an opportunity to increase housing supply in an MTSA. This development will contribute towards meeting the city's intensification target for the planned station stop at Sports World, again with a planned density of 160 people and jobs per hectare. It currently does not meet that target, as only 39 people and jobs per hectare are currently present in this area, which is one of the lowest densities in MTSAs in the city of Kitchener. This development will diversify housing stock and provide an additional housing choice in a community that is currently dominated by housing that is owner-occupied, low-rise, ground-oriented dwellings in the form of single-detached, semi-detached, and townhouse units. Housing diversity is needed to provide a greater housing choice and meet the needs of an increasingly diverse residents, household types such as young families, professionals, retirees, people with disabilities, all with various ranges of incomes. Furthermore, this development will provide for an opportunity to introduce a new compatible built form in a neighborhood and contribute towards a complete community. In conclusion, staff are supportive of the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments. The applications are consistent with policies of the provincial policy statement, conform to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the regional official plan, the City of Kitchener official plan, represent good planning, and are in the public interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunwart. We'll move forward to our delegations. We have Hugh Handy for GSP Group and Adam Carapella, and that's Tricar, and ready to present when, yeah. And Chris Lia and James Rice are in attendance as well. Is that a joint submission together, or would they be presenting separately?
They're just here to answer any questions.
In case,
as
okay.
backup. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thanks very much. Good evening, members of the committee. My name, as you said, is Adam Carapella. I'm Vice President at Tricar. Pleased to be here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to present. Can't hear?
If you can speak a little louder.
Okay.
Can the mic be brought up?
I'll just lean over.
No.
Pleased to be here tonight. Thank you for the opportunity to present on our project at 4220 King Street East and 25 Sports World Crossing Road. Like I said, we also have a number of members of the project team here to answer any questions as well, should they come up. Next slide, please. Next one. Here. Carol? There we go. All right. Just a little background on TriCar. Our team at TriCar has been very fortunate to win a number of provincial and national awards. And just to know, we've also been honored as a 3-time winner and 6-time finalist of the Terrion High Rise Builder of the Year Award, and that is judged solely by homeowners with feedback from homeowners. So something we're quite proud of, and based on customer service quality. And there's just a couple shots of various developments in the area that we've undertaken and completed. As Craig mentioned, the proposed development is 420 residential units. We believe with those residential units, there will be a great deal of positive spin-off benefit to the surrounding community and to the surrounding commercial in the area. This will help a lot of the existing retail that you may have seen if you've been in the area has been a little bit hurt by the pandemic. So it'll create, again, like Craig mentioned, a bit more of a complete community. The project itself is truly mixed use with a significant amount of commercial retail activating the ground floor. Is envisioned to be a combination of both rental and condominium units. So depending on the phase, there will be opportunity for people to purchase and people to rent, again, depending on the phase. The suite mix here, average size is around 1,150 square feet, so larger than the average square footage that you'd typically see in towers, meaning they're very livable, more suited to a wider range of renters and homeowners such as empty nesters, retirees, professionals, young professionals, and even families, as you do have a number of 2-bedroom plus den and 3-bedroom options proposed. And then just a little bit of the site context. We believe the location is prime for development because the Sportswood area is a major commercial node located on the future LRT route, as was mentioned earlier. Multifamily housing options currently are not available in the area, so adding this project will ensure there are a robust number of options kind of all the way along the housing continuum. And from a development perspective, we have a lot of experience in infill projects. And we believe that this one is quite unique. It's not impacted by any environmental, any heritage factors. And it's not adjacent to any existing residential. So we believe from that perspective, from a development perspective, and infill, it checks a lot of boxes. Thank you, and I'll hand it over to Hugh Handy.
Thanks, Adam. Chair Singh, members of the committee, my name is Hugh Handy, and I'm a land use planner and vice president at GSP Group, and here on behalf of TriCar. The development, as Mr. Dumart had mentioned, is really 3 buildings, 18-story in the middle, 15 to the one side on the right, and a 14, and it's based into 2 phases. And phase 1 will obviously, pending approval, commence. We're starting into site plan approval as we speak. There is a rooftop amenity between the 2 buildings that will have a combination of active and passive areas for sitting, barbecues, children's activities and play, as well as on the surface. There will also be opportunities for play and recreation as well. There is, as Adam mentioned, a commercial and amenity space on the main level as well, and the intention is really to activate this area. In terms of the land use planning framework, Mr. Dumart has gone over. This really is guided by provincial, regional, and local level policy. The MTSA in it, where it's located, is literally at the transit stop, as mentioned previously, which promotes the mix of heights and densities that are transit supportive. The proposed development integrates all of these activities in the public realm, and really then promotes the future of this area, starts to bring in this mixture of houses. We've assessed this in terms of provincial policy. I know your staff has as well, being consistent with provincial policy. conforming with the growth plan, the regional official plan, and the city official plan. And in my opinion, and in our team's opinion, it represents good land use planning. We have reviewed the staff report, and unfortunately, things happened at a last minute when we were looking at going through the site plan process. And one of those is in relation to a matter that was discussed this morning with staff. Our design review noted a clerical error in the current site plan. We raised the issue as soon as we could with staff this morning. Due to the site topography of the site, it goes down towards Sports World. The change in grade across the property and the parking levels are above ground on the building floor. And those combinations and the floor areas used to calculate the ratio raised this to 5.2 rather than 4.0. In requesting this evening, we would note, and I would note, that although we're requesting this technical amendment this evening before committee, there's no additional dwelling units proposed, no additional commercial space, no additional parking, no massing building height or other building changes being proposed. So the plans before you tonight continue to be the exact development plans which we've been working with staff. And as it mentioned today, we brought that to staff's attention. Respectfully, then, I'll wrap up and say this hopefully is a small change to the report. We support the recommendations before you this evening, and we'll look for your support of the staff recommendation. And again, Adam, myself, and our team are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Handy. And I do have a question for you from Councillor Dunal.
Thank you, Chair Singh. So when I was first presented with this a couple weeks ago by staff, I obviously had my concerns regarding traffic and congestion, and that seems to be my theme tonight. I no longer have that concern once I kind of conceptualized in my head how the traffic flow would be in and out of those towers. My question is, so that the error in the floor space ratio, 4 to 5.2, what does that mean in the specs of things? So you're saying it's not going to increase any parking spaces, or so what does that impact? I'm just curious.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, it doesn't really impact anything other than a number in the bylaw. So when we were calculating, and because the building comes out of the ground and the building floor area and the way the definition is structured, then that starts to count within that overall area. So I mean, Mr. Dumark can clarify that through his comments, but I think that's really what I would have to add to it.
And then, so you mentioned that there is a green space between the two buildings. What buildings are we referring to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, it would be between the two buildings that are known as 25 Sports World, so right at the corner of Sports World and King. There is a podium level in between at the top of the podium where there's an open, like a rooftop amenity area. There's indoor amenity areas, and then outside there would be amenity areas in that for seating, for active play.
And that's for everybody of the three towers?
That's for everyone.
Okay.
Sorry, just to jump in. So the area between buildings 1 and 2, so the 25 Sports World, that area would be for those two buildings. Building 3 has its own terrace on the 3rd floor, as well as its own green space at grade as well for Building 3. Yep.
Okay. What I will say as the councillor for that ward, you know, that area in which we're going to be building these buildings on has definitely been, you know, I don't want to say an eyesore, but, you know, hasn't been the most well-kept area of particularly around Deer Ridge. And so I'm looking forward to, you know, having these towers continue to grow with that community and with mixed use level as well. And so thanks for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor Dunal. Anyone else? I see no other questions of the delegation. Thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you.
And I'll open up for questions of staff. Okay, I see no questions of staff. I'll take a mover for the motion. Oh, anyone online? Nope, I'm not seeing any hands. Take a mover for the motion. Councillor Deneau. Thank you very much. The item has been moved. There's... Oh. Go ahead.
Sorry, Chair, I couldn't email you fast enough. Just a reminder, we'll need direction on whether this committee will support the change to the FSR to 5.2.
Okay.
And if so, we will have to include in the motion that we're waiving notice on the change of the zoning bylaw amendment. I'll give the wording to the clerk, but pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act, as amended, further notice was not required to be given with respect to zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 22005 KCD.
Okay, so that's the amended motion or amendment to increase the FSR. Can we just accept that as an amendment to the main motion, or would you want a separate amendment for that?
So should committee choose to approve the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw tonight for council next week, you would have to add that paragraph to your resolution and direct staff to revise both the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment to increase the floor space ratio to 5.2.
Okay, so if we're taking the vote as the amended motion, that would include that extra language, and
Correct.
the clerk department would coincide that in the upcoming report to council. Thank you. So with the amended motion, moved by Councillor Deneau. All those in favor? Opposed? And that too carries. Thank you very much. And that's as amended. Really appreciate all your patience. I know you guys waited quite a bit to get to this point. All right, and that takes us to the completion of this meeting. All right, can I take a motion to adjourn? Councillor Schneider, all those in favor? Opposed? And all that carries. Councillor O'Donnell voted twice with two hands up, so